my stories. You'll have a damn good time. Morning swallows the window light and trace the room with hands that know the light. Mug gone cold on the countertop. Your laugh a ghost, I can't get out. Folded days like paper boats, set them out to sea where nothing floats. Traffic hums and the city prays, but the same small cloud just stays. There's a rain that stays on me. Quiet, private geography. It writes the hours on my skin where the light once lived within. I'll say your name into the night, comes back hollow out of sight. So I hold the photograph and close my eyes. Let the rain be the only reply.
Marty Blubberman was a walrus. A sad walrus. He had been sad for so long he couldn't remember what happy even felt like anymore. Happy was like a word in a foreign language, once familiar, now untranslatable. Every morning was the same. His alarm clock buzzed at 6 a.m., a shrill drone that once upon a time had stirred him to life. Now, half the time, he didn't even notice it. The sound blended into the hum of his rain cloud, a storm that followed him everywhere. It dripped on the sheets, soaked the carpet, rattled against the thin windows. The storm was loyal. At least he could count on that. Marty rolled out of bed with a sigh, tusks dragging the air, whiskers matted from the damp. His wife's side of the bed was still a mess. The blanket was twisted, the pillow indented, the sheets wrinkled in the exact way she had left them the night before she died. He couldn't bring himself to fix it. Couldn't smooth the fabric. Couldn't touch it. The bed was half a shrine, half a crime scene. Every morning, Marty woke up next to her ghost. He shuffled to the kitchen. The linoleum floor was warped and yellowed, a patchwork of water stains and crumbs. He opened the fridge, greeted by the same sight as always, a lonely carton of milk, always sour. He poured it into a chipped mug, gave it a sniff, winced, then drank anyway. Figures. It was his catchphrase now. The universe gave him sour milk every day, and Marty just accepted it. Why fight back? The milk was always going to win. Breakfast was an anchovy sandwich. Lunch was an anchovy sandwich. Dinner was, well, another anchovy sandwich. The smell clung to his mustache like a curse, seeping into the fabric of his shirts, his raincoat, his very skin. He had stains down the front of his wrinkled button-up, blotches like battle scars. But he didn't bother changing. Why would he? Nobody cared what Marty looked like. Nobody asked. The commute was the worst part. Marty wedged himself into his old sedan, windshield wipers squeaking against the drizzle. The car smelled faintly of fish and damp carpet. Traffic was always stopped. On either side, other drivers laughed into their phones or sang along to pop songs. Once in a while, a penguin family pulled up next to him in a minivan, feathers bright, beaks grinning. They sang together, flapping to the beat, kids bouncing in car seats. Marty sat silent, staring straight ahead, tusks fogging the glass. He pulled into the office lot. The building loomed gray, a monolith of misery. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed like angry bees. Marty took his place at his cubicle, a cramped square of fabric walls that smelled of dust and toner ink. His chair squeaked every time he shifted, mocking him. Marty typed slowly at his desk, big brown flippers pressing each key like a funeral bell. Clack, clack, clack. His work was meaningless. Endless reports that would be filed away into digital cabinets, never read by anyone. He knew it. His boss knew it. Everyone knew it. But still he typed. That was his life now, typing into the void. Marty was stuck on the corporate ladder, wedged so tight in the middle rung that climbing higher was impossible. Promotions passed him by. Raises skipped his name. He wasn't even disliked. He was simply forgotten. Co-workers whispered about him. That's Marty, the one whose wife died. They'd smile politely if he looked their way, then lower their voices. No one wanted to invite the rain cloud guy to happy hour. No one wanted him at karaoke night or birthday parties. His sadness was contagious, they thought. And besides, what do you say to a walrus whose wife was murdered by a penguin? So Marty ate his anchovy sandwiches alone. He drank lukewarm coffee alone. He sat under his rain cloud, typing reports, alone. Sometimes the office threw parties. Streamers, balloons, confetti. Once they threw a surprise for Cindy in marketing. Everyone cheered, laughing, snapping photos. Marty wandered into the break room just as the cake was being cut. The last slice was set aside. He shuffled forward, tusks glinting hopefully. Someone whispered, "Oh, save that one for Gary." Marty nodded, muttered, "Figures," and waddled back to his cubicle. On his desk sat a single photo frame, his wife. Smiling, eyes crinkled with warmth, a blonde wig perched atop her whiskered head, little tusks poking just so. It was the only splash of color in his gray cell. While other desks had bobbleheads, vacation postcards, plants, or calendars, Marty's had nothing. Nothing but her. At lunch, Marty sat at his desk while coworkers gathered in clusters. Penguins and people laughed about weekend plans, karaoke, barbecues, trips to the lake. Marty chewed his soggy sandwich, pretending not to listen. But he always listened. They never invited him. Not out of cruelty, but out of avoidance. No one wanted to deal with his rain cloud. At night, his rituals were always the same. He shuffled home through the drizzle, kicked off his shoes by the door, sat in his recliner, belly sagging under his shirt, crossword puzzle on his lap. Not because he liked crosswords, but because his wife had loved them. He filled in the little boxes slowly, tusks tapping the paper. Half the time he didn't even finish them. He just stared at the words, hoping she might appear beside him to finish them for him. She never did. The apartment was cluttered. Stacks of newspapers, boxes of her things, dishes in the sink. Marty couldn't bring himself to throw anything away. Every trinket was a memory. The apartment was cluttered. Stacks of newspapers, boxes of her things, dishes in the sink. Marty couldn't bring himself to throw anything away. Every trinket was a memory, and memories were all he had left. Sometimes he sat on the bed staring at her side, frozen in time. The blanket twisted, the pillow indented. He whispered her name into the dark, over and over, until sleep finally dragged him under. And every morning the cycle began again. Sour milk, anchovy sandwiches, traffic, typing, whispers, loneliness, crosswords, ghosts. Marty Blubberman was a walrus, a sad walrus, and everyone knew it. Marty Blubberman was used to being overlooked. He told himself it didn't bother him, that he liked being invisible. But every day the world had a new way of proving just how small he really was. The drive to work was always the first insult. Marty merged carefully, cautiously, signaling like a polite sermon. Cars sped past him without looking. One morning, as he inched into the slow lane, a black SUV cut him off so close his wipers rattled. The driver rolled down the window, stuck out a hand, and flipped him off. Just like that. No words, just a finger. The world's simplest summary of what Marty was worth. He gripped the wheel, tusks fogging the glass. The SUV sped away. His rain cloud lowered itself an inch, as though trying to cover his eyes. "Figures," he said, because there was nothing else to say. At the office, he shuffled through the lobby with his briefcase tucked close. The revolving door spun too fast for him. He had to stumble into the building like a late guest. As he passed the elevators, 2 penguins in suits came around the corner and clipped him with their shoulders. "Didn't see you there," one muttered, not slowing. Of course they didn't see him. Nobody ever saw him. Marty checked his shirt. Coffee from earlier had left a tan stain across the white fabric. He brushed at it with his flipper, but the smear only spread. The elevator doors closed before he could reach them. He pressed the button and waited alone. Figures. At his cubicle, he typed slowly, tusks catching the desk edge when he leaned in too close. His boss waddled up behind him, smiling that fake smile that never reaches his eyes. "Buddy," the boss said, using the nickname that wasn't a nickname. "Gonna need you to stay late again. And a quarter, you know how it is." "Buddy," the boss said, using the nickname that wasn't a nickname. "Gonna need you to stay late again. And a quarter, you know how it is." Marty nodded. He always nodded. No matter how much overtime he gave, he never got a raise, never got promoted, never even got thanked. "You're a team player," the boss added, already walking away. Marty looked down at the photo of his wife on his desk. Her blonde wig, her little tusks, her smile that used to mean the world was fair. He whispered to her, "I don't even know what the team is anymore." The rain cloud dripped onto his keyboard. On Thursday, the office threw a birthday party. Balloons bobbed from cubicles. Someone rolled in a sheet cake frosted bright blue with a cartoon penguin on top. Everyone gathered in the break room, laughing, clapping, cameras flashing. Marty shuffled in at the back. By the time he reached the table, the cake was sliced down to crumbs. The last piece sat on a plate, waiting. He stepped forward, flippers out. "Save that one for Cindy," someone said. Heads nodded. The plate disappeared into her hands. Marty blinked at the empty tray. His rain cloud let out a slow drizzle down his collar. He turned and walked back to his cubicle, alone. On Friday, his co-workers planned a company party. He overheard them whispering about karaoke, about the open bar, about who would bring what. The email invitation went out that afternoon. Marty checked his inbox. Nothing. He refreshed the page. Still nothing. A penguin from accounting waddled by and saw him staring at the screen. "Oh, sorry, Marty. Didn't think you'd be interested." Interested. That was the word people used when they didn't want to say, "We don't want you there." He closed the email and looked down at his sandwich. Anchovy, of course. He chewed slowly, each bite tasting more like cardboard. At the grocery store that weekend, Marty waited in line with his basket. The penguin in front of him piled steaks, soda, and chips onto the belt. The cashier laughed at his jokes, flippers light on the scanner. When Marty stepped up, she didn't look at him, didn't smile. She scanned his sour milk and anchovies in silence. "That'll be $6.40, she said flatly. He paid, shuffled his groceries into his bag, and looked back once. She was already laughing again, but not at him. Never at him. Monday evening, Marty shuffled into traffic once more. Red lights stretched down the street like a funeral procession. His windshield fogged with his breath. The wipers squeaked in protest. The crosswalk signal chirped. Pedestrians streamed across. Penguins, mostly. They waddled with confidence, umbrellas bobbing like crowns. Marty waited. He always waited. Then one penguin stepped into the street late. A straggler. He waddled slow, belly swaying like he owned the asphalt. He didn't hurry, didn't glance left or right, just plodded along, umbrella too small, dripping onto his suit. Marty slammed the brakes. His coffee spilled into his lap. The penguin stopped in front of his hood, turned his head, and looked directly at Marty. It wasn't a hostile look. It wasn't even curious. It was worse. It was indifferent. The world had spent years telling Marty he was invisible, and now this penguin stared right at him, as if to say, "You'll wait. You'll always wait." Marty's tusks gleamed under the gray sky. His flippers tightened on the wheel. He glanced up at the photo clipped to his visor. His wife, smiling in her wig and mustache, eyes daring him to try, daring him to want one good thing. The rain cloud pressed lower, almost inside the car with him. His chest rose once, fell once. "No more," he whispered. His foot slid off the brake, onto the gas. The engine obeyed. The car leapt. The penguin flapped once, umbrella spinning into the air. Then came the thud, hollow and final. Silence. Marty opened the door, stepped into the crosswalk. The rain cloud poured onto his shoulders. On the sidewalk, penguins froze, flippers raised mid-air. A human gasped. Marty looked down at the shape under his bumper, looked at the crowd, looked at the storm above him. His voice was quiet, but it carried like thunder. No more. Marty drove back into the city, with his rain cloud sitting low over the roof of the car. For years, everything inside him had been empty. Now, the emptiness had shifted into something sharper, calm, steady, like a decision finally made. He wasn't angry, not in the way people expected. He was tired, and being tired made everything clear. He parked crooked in front of his office building. The revolving door spun too fast, like always. But this time he didn't stumble. He pushed through with purpose. The fluorescent lobby lights hummed above him, washing him in the same colorless glow he'd walked under for years. The first stop was the vending machine. Darren was there. Darren, who always laughed too loud, always made sure Marty knew he didn't belong. He slapped the glass, waiting for his bag of chips to drop, smirking at someone's joke. Marty stepped beside him. No words. He leaned forward and shoved. The machine toppled with a slow inevitability, pinning Darren flat with a crunch of glass and steel. Chips and candy spilled across the floor. Marty picked up a chocolate bar, unwrapped it, and took a bite. He chewed thoughtfully, looking down at Darren's wide, panicked eyes. "Didn't see me, huh?" Marty muttered. "Figures." He left Darren and the candy scattered like confetti behind him. The restroom was next. A young penguin, healthy as could be, strutted past Marty and ducked straight into the handicap stall, though 5 others stood wide open. Marty followed. He pressed his flipper hard against the stall door. The hinges groaned, then gave way. The penguin squawked in shock, but Marty's weight was heavier, steadier. The toilet bowl splashed, feathers thrashed, and then all was still. Marty stepped back, dripping, his mustache damp with mist from the splash. "Head in the toilet," he said softly. "Figures." Back in the stairwell, footsteps echoed. A temp he vaguely recognized appeared on the landing, fumbling with a stack of papers. The temp looked up, startled, and smirked like Marty was a joke that had walked in without a punchline. Marty reached out, almost gently, and pushed. The temp toppled backward, tumbling down the concrete stairs in a messy, flapping roll. The sound of the fall echoed up the shaft, ugly and final. Marty leaned on the railing, watching the darkness at the bottom of the stairwell swallow the body. "Watch your step," he said. "Figures." At last he reached his boss's office. The door was ajar, the light warm and smug. His boss sat at the desk, humming, papers neatly stacked. A phone tucked to his ear. He looked up, startled but not alarmed. "Buddy," the boss said, smiling. "Didn't expect you back tonight." Marty shut the door behind him. He didn't answer. He walked forward, picked up the heavy stapler from the desk, and swung it into the side of his boss's head. The phone clattered to the floor, a confused voice crackling on the other end. The boss gasped, but Marty was already looping his tie around the man's throat, pulling tight. The struggle was short, desperate. Then the chair went still. Marty dropped the tie, breathing steady, and looked at the slumped body. Papers fluttered across the floor like lost excuses. "Overtime's canceled," he said, turning for the door. "Figures." The building was silent as he climbed the last flights to the roof. His footsteps echoed up the stairwell, the rain cloud dripping on the concrete like a leaky faucet. When he pushed open the door, the cold night air hit him, wet and sharp. The city stretched below, its lights blinking indifferently. He walked to the edge and stood, looking out, the rain cloud hovering faithfully above. For a long moment he simply stood, breathing, staring at the horizon. Then the rooftop door banged open. Several officers rushed in, guns drawn, voices sharp. "Put your hands up!" one yelled. Marty raised his flippers slowly. He turned to face them, still balanced on the edge. Rain streaked his face, dripping down his mustache and tusks. "Why'd you do it, Marty?" one officer shouted. Marty was silent. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out the photograph of his wife, her blonde wig slightly crooked, her mustache proud, her little tusks glinting. He held it against his chest, close to his heart. Finally he spoke, soft but steady. "I miss my wife," he said. "She saw me." And before they could move, Marty leaned back and threw himself from the roof. The officers shouted, opened fire. Bullets ripped through the rain, punching holes in his heavy walrus body as he fell in slow motion. 10 stories down, crashed into the roof of a parked car, metal buckling, glass exploding outward. He lay there, broken, breathing shallow. The rain cloud hovered, dripping faithfully on him one last time. His eyes rolled to the sky, where for the first time all day, the storm clouds began to part, showing a faint sliver of moonlight. Marty's mustache twitched into a ghost of a smile. His lips parted. "Figures," he whispered, and then he was gone.
Morning swallows the window light and trace the room with hands that know the light. Mug gone cold on the countertop. Your laugh a ghost, I can't get out. Folded days like paper boats, set them out to sea where nothing floats. Traffic hums and the city prays, but the same small cloud just stays. There's a rain that stays on me. Quiet, private geography. It writes the hours on my skin where the light once lived within. Don't say your name into the night, comes back hollow out of sight. So I hold the photograph and close my eyes. Let the rain be the only reply.